The Tennessee Titans made a splash this week when they traded starting cornerback Jarvis Brownlee Jr. to the Jets for scraps. They sent Brownlee in a 2026 seventh and got a 2026 sixth in return, upgrading a seventh to a sixth in next year's draft class for a 24-year-old starting caliber cornerback who you drafted in the fifth round just a year before. Didn't make a whole lot of sense to people. Here's my 2 cents from having covered him in all 16 games that he started as a Tennessee Titan, and a little bit of perspective on what I've heard and seen from the organization this week as we've tried to make sense of a confusing trade. If you're part of the Tennessee faithful, you know just how many years the Titans have shaved off your life with the emotional roller coaster of sports. Or maybe the roller coaster of life is messing with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals. The new year is a blank space for you to write a new story. BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. They are our incredible sponsor for this video. Regardless, if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools you need to approach your life in a very different way. That's where our sponsor, BetterHelp, comes into play. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost if it's not the right fit. BetterHelp's platform makes finding a therapist easier because it's online and remote. BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. Plus, with our link, you get 10% off your first month. Start fresh any day of the year with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/ATOZsports and get 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp. Jarvis is a player whose play style I fell in love with in the scouting process the spring that he was drafted back in 24. His tenacity and press man coverage and explosive downhill tackling in the run game was and still is a ton of fun, in my opinion. I remember there being some red flags on him that floated around leading up to the draft, and they offered a possible explanation for why such a talented player fell to the fifth round like he did. But anonymous character concerns get floated about countless players every year, and since I'm not a part of that evaluation process, I take him with a massive grain of salt. As a fan of the on-field talent, my hope was always that he'd beat the allegations and succeed in the NFL. His rookie year was promising. He worked his way into the starting lineup and showed flashes of early ability that far exceeded reasonable expectations for a fifth rounder in his first year. And throughout his 16 starts in Tennessee, I more or less felt like he had successfully put any off-field questions to bed. He was somebody I always enjoyed talking to personally. He wasn't always the most political speaker in front of a camera and wasn't afraid to wear his emotions on his sleeve or speak his mind, but that's something I loved about working with him from a media standpoint. The most I ever heard from him, or I guess I should say about him in Tennessee, was just general reports of maybe being a bit high maintenance and perhaps not being the most coachable player of all time. I took it all with a massive grain of salt. He's a young cornerback. He plays with his hair on fire. I expect those guys to be a little bit crazy anyways. To me, it's practically an occupational hazard. It wasn't until near the end in recent weeks that, in hindsight, some more clues began popping up on my radar. It seems like the coaching staff may have soured on him in recent weeks, if not earlier, and the front office had him on the trade block well in advance of the trade taking place. Jordan Schultz formally reported that at least the Patriots had poked around acquiring Brownlee before the Jets ultimately made the deal, and I know for a fact that there were a handful of other teams that were in and then out and then in and then out. The Titans team writer Jim Wyatt went on 104.5 local radio the day of the trade and insinuated some things behind the scenes that he's not really at liberty to talk about in the wake of this move, but they did exist. The only thing I know for sure is this move falls outside the Overton window of rational trade value. In no world does even the stupidest, most oblivious, most hard-headed front office in the league see this trade as appropriate value if there's not more to the story. That's only reinforced by the idea that no team in the league made a better offer for a starting caliber nickel cornerback than what the Jets finally settled on. Startable corners do not grow on trees, and the Jets just got one of those guys for practically nothing. I had nothing but a good time covering Brownlee in Tennessee. I was and still am a fan of his game, and my gut is wary of hit piece speculation to justify this move. But my head tells me something clearly led to Mike Borgonzi deciding he needed to go no matter what. And at this point, it's not unfair to wonder if concerns from his scouting report contributed to this confusing situation. For A to Z Sports Nashville, I'm Easton Freeze.